7 dark figures on snowmobiles advanced in a tight tactical formation. Not a scattered pack, but a coordinated strike unit. They believed they were about to ambush an isolated geologist, cut off from the world at his frozen outpost. They counted on surprise, on superior numbers, and on the brutal northern wilderness they assumed was on their side. They miscalculated only one thing. To me, Gregory Kane, this white desert wasn't a prison. It was a fortress. And its master, the man they came to kill, knew more about surviving and hunting men than they could possibly imagine. 18 years ago, they buried me in a classified archive, erased my name from the list of the living. But a man trained to operate alone on hostile ground, a man for whom ice cliffs and frozen canyons are home, doesn't die that easily. On this night of steel and frost, they were about to learn what it means to rouse a beast that has waited 18 years in its lair for revenge. Before I continue my story, subscribe to the channel and write where you are listening to me from. I am really interested in this, and it is important to me. My name is Gregory Kane. I'm 52 years old, and for the last 18 years, I've managed Prospect Station Crystal 4, a private geological research base owned by Northern Shield Industries. The base consists of several reinforced insulated modules embedded deep into the permafrost on the edge of the Alaskan Arctic Plateau, 400 kilometers from the nearest settlement. A supply helicopter lands here twice a year. Once at the start of the short Arctic summer to bring fresh personnel and provisions, and again in the fall to pick up the outgoing crew and cargo samples. When winter comes, I'm the only one who stays behind. To the company, I'm the perfect winter caretaker. Quiet, self-reliant, former military communications officer, discharged after a head injury. A man who knows this merciless land like his own veins and can keep an isolated station running alone for months at a time. A flawless cover story for someone who never wanted to be found again. No one here knows that my injury was actually 3 bullet wounds, or that my military work had nothing to do with communication. No one suspects that the stoic, unsmiling geologist was once a senior field operative of an off-the-record task unit known as Contour 12, a ghost division whose very existence was erased under the highest level of secrecy. I woke not from noise, but from the absence of it. That wrong kind of silence, the heavy, suffocating kind that presses on your ears when the world itself seems to hold its breath. My hearing, sharpened by years of solitude, had grown used to the symphony of the polar night, the steady hum of the diesel generator, the groan of metal struts contracting in the cold, and the endless whisper of wind sweeping over the ice road. Now the generator was silent. Impossible. If the main one failed, the automatic backup should have kicked in. I lay still on my bunk, every nerve awake. Adrenaline stabbed my heart with frozen precision. My thoughts cleared, snapping into combat rhythm. This wasn't an outage. If it were, the alarm would have sounded. Someone had cut the power from outside, which meant they were already here. I slid off the bunk soundlessly. Dressed only in thermal gear, I could already feel the temperature in the module dropping fast. The most important thing was to make them believe I was still asleep, caught off guard. In the corner, beneath a pile of maps and geological charts, hidden in a recessed panel under the floor, lay my real past. Not the hunting rifle mounted on the wall for decoration, but my old friend, an automatic pistol with a suppressor and 2 spare magazines. The cold weight settled in my palm like an extension of my own hand. I checked the magazine, slid around into the chamber. The soft click of the mechanism was music to my ears. I crept toward the window, a narrow observation slit of triple-layered security glass. Pulling the curtain aside by a fraction, I saw them. 7 figures in white camo suits, moving with precision through the dim blue haze of the polar dusk. They weren't hunters or escaped convicts. They were trained, disciplined, covering each other's approach by sector. 2 by the generator shed, 2 by the fuel tanks. 3, probably including their commander, heading for my living quarters. Their weapons, customized rifles with tactical attachments. Professionals. They weren't here for core samples. They were here for me. The plan formed instantly, as if it had always been there. Don't let them regroup. Use their numbers against them. My base was my fortress. I knew every bolt, every shadow, every imperfection in its walls. To them, this was 3 linked research modules. To me, it was a battlefield, carefully trapped and rigged. I reached the wall adjoining the lab unit. Behind a panel of instruments lay my first surprise. I tore off a layer of insulation and crossed two hidden wires, a modification of my own making. Instantly, the station erupted in noise, a blaring fire alarm, red strobes flashing across the complex. In the lab module, the fire suppression system kicked in, flooding the room with vapor. To them, panic, malfunction. To me, a smokescreen. As predicted, two of the men rushing toward the fuel depot broke off toward the lab, thinking I was trapped inside. The three near my module hesitated for a second. 1 second was all I needed. I slipped through the connecting corridor, sprinting toward the outer door. The attackers expected me to barricade myself inside. They didn't expect me to come out swinging. I slammed my shoulder into the door, bursting into the howling wind. The cold hit me like a blade. -44 and falling. Two of them turned startled, too slow, two muffled shots. Two bodies dropped silently into the snow. The third opened fire, bullets tearing the ice inches from my head as I dove behind a drift piled against the wall. 2 down, 5 to go. The remaining operators regrouped fast. The commander barked orders over his comms, but the roar of the wind and station alarms scrambled their transmission. Exactly what I wanted. Broken comms meant broken command. Never stay still. Keep moving. I crawled along the base wall, cutting through deep snow toward the generator block. Under the entry ramp there, I'd built a hidden crawl space years ago, just big enough to hide and strike back from. Suddenly, the alarms went dead. Someone had found the control box and shut down the entire grid. The wrong kind of silence returned, broken only by the wind, and through it, I caught a distant rumbling sound. Engines. They were firing up their snowmobiles again. Not to retreat, but to circle the base and tear it apart with heavy machine guns. Turn my fortress into my tomb. I ran. Bullets chased me through the dark. One grazed my shoulder, boring clean through the flesh. White-hot pain flared, but adrenaline kept me upright. I crashed through the door of the generator block and slammed it shut behind me just as another burst riddled the metal outside. I was hurt, alone, surrounded. But in this frozen dark, I wasn't cornered. I was home. While they reloaded, my brain worked faster than pain could follow. Every nerve, every thought aligned for one purpose: survive, strike, vanish. And through the tactical mapping unfolding in my head, seeped the ghosts of another night, 18 years ago, on a wind-bitten coast, the air thick with sea salt, gunpowder, and betrayal. The night contour. 12 was buried alive. That memory still burned. The wound then was to my ribs, not my shoulder, but the pain was the same. Sharp, clean, real. And it reminded me of one truth. We were betrayed. Our unit existed off the record. 12 people. Ghosts trained to infiltrate, extract, and eliminate anywhere on the planet. We answered to no branch, no flag. Our handler, General Ramsey, reported to the highest office, so we were told. We were his scalpel, his dirty miracle. Our last mission was in 2007. Cover story: amber miners on the Baltic shore. Real objective: shut down an illegal supply chain moving high-grade dielectric resin, a rare material critical for missile guidance systems, out of the country. The deeper we dug, the clearer it became. The smuggling route traced straight to Ramsey himself. He wasn't just a traitor. He was building an empire, buying loyalty, selling the nation piece by piece. We gathered evidence: records, voice tapes, manifests. On December 5th, the plan was to apprehend everyone during a major transfer in an abandoned coastal fort. We sent Ramsey the coordinates, expecting backup. Instead, his pet executioner came, Captain Damon Fox and a band of mercenaries. At the same time, foreign agents we were supposed to intercept arrived too. Tipped off by Ramsey, he set us all against each other and wiped the slate clean. It was a slaughterhouse. We fought until there was nothing left to fight with. I watched our analyst, Ross Sloan, die destroying the comlink. Saw Arson Cole, our close quarters expert, take a burst to the chest while shielding Lila Sparks, our tech specialist. I tried to drag her out. The last thing I remember was her eyes and the blast that ripped the floor apart. Fox threw grenades into the bunker and left us for dead. I was blown into the freezing sea and somehow crawled to shore, half conscious, broken. The news the next day told the world that a group of foreign saboteurs had been killed attempting to steal state secrets. Our names were on that list. They didn't just kill us, they erased us. But I carried something they didn't know about, a copy of our encrypted archive. I'd hidden the master key, a crystal data node built into the striking head of a geological hammer, my first field tool. Every operation file, every record, every name that could damn Ramsey was inside it. That was my insurance policy, my legacy, my weapon. And now, after 18 years, they'd come for it, which meant one thing. Ramsey was alive, powerful, and still cleaning up his messes. He'd sent new killers, but the old dog, Damon Fox, was probably still the one holding the leash. As the snowmobiles roared outside, the pain in my shoulder sharpened my focus. The metal walls trembled under bursts of fire. They thought I was cornered. They were wrong. They had no idea this geologist was about to turn the hunt around. The maintenance bay wasn't just home to generators. It also held oxygen and acetylene tanks for welding. My fingers brushed across the cold metal, settling on one of them. That was my chance. I grabbed the heaviest wrench I could find and swung it hard against the valve of an oxygen tank. A deafening hiss filled the room, the compressed gas jetting into the wall with explosive force. The tank rocketed loose, spinning wild like a berserk torpedo, smashing everything in its path. I barely managed to leap aside. It slammed into the far wall, ricocheted off a generator, and then punched through the metal siding. Outside came the crash, a yell, then the dull thunder of an explosion. I didn't need to see what happened to know. 50 kilograms of steel, turned projectile, had slammed into one of their snowmobiles. The blast set off its ammo and fuel tank. One less vehicle, and probably 2 fewer men. Before the survivors could regroup, I moved. While they were distracted by the wreck gouting fire into the night, I slipped out the back door. Wounded, underdressed, and freezing in the -40 abyss, I still had one advantage. This was my terrain. I sprinted toward a narrow, jagged canyon 100 yards from the base. To them, it was a black fracture in the ice. To me, it was escape and the beginning of payback. I ran along its frozen floor, clutching my bleeding shoulder. The cold slowed the flow, sealed it almost at once. Behind me, the engines of surviving snowmobiles roared to life again. They knew I'd slipped the trap. They'd start sweeping the area. But in these mountains of ice and stone, machines were useless. They'd have to dismount eventually. On foot, without understanding this land, a man was already dead. The hunt had begun. Only now, I was the hunter. I had my pistol, 2 mags, a knife, and 18 years of cage fury. They had rifles, numbers, and the comforting illusion that they were tracking a wounded prey. Not yet realizing, they'd just become mine. I pressed myself behind an icy ridge, waiting. The war that began 18 years ago had suddenly resumed, and this time I intended to finish it. The high Arctic plateau wasn't just a wilderness. It was a maze carved by time itself. Hundreds of canyons, thousands of cracks, sheer cliffs, frozen waterfalls. Anyone who didn't know the roads here would wander in circles until the cold claimed them. I'd spent nearly 2 decades in this solitude. Every fissure, every stone, I knew them all. This frozen hell was my ally. I slipped into a narrow crevice where I had a clear view of the canyon entrance. The throb in my shoulder dulled into a steady pulse. I tore off part of my sleeve, tightening a rough bandage to stem the bleeding. Cold was my second enemy, but it could also be my weapon. Standing still meant death. Movement meant control. Soon 2 figures appeared up on the ridge, moving carefully, eyes scanning the shadows. They were about 300 meters out, too far for a pistol. Inch by inch, they descended a loose slope, unaware of a safer path on the other side. Their first mistake. I waited. When they reached the canyon floor, they split up, one probing ahead, the other holding back to cover him. Classic tactic, and fatal here. In this terrain, splitting up was suicide. I let the lead man vanish behind a bend, then crept into motion. The rear guard was alone, perfect prey. But a shot, even suppressed, would echo loud and far in these narrow walls. I chose nature's weapon instead. Slowly, silently, I scaled the canyon wall, gripping cracks and ledges like old friends. The instincts of Contour 12 never fade. Near the top, a massive lip of drifted snow hung dangerously over the edge, ready to collapse. 30 meters below stood my target. I found a loose boulder beside me. I didn't need to throw it, just tip the balance. With a controlled shove, I sent it rolling. It crashed against the cornice base. That alone was enough. Thousands of tons of packed snow convulsed with a breathtaking roar. The small avalanche swept down the wall, hungry and fast. The white figure below tried to dart aside, too late. The surge swallowed him whole, burying him in silence. The other turned back at once, alarmed by the noise. He ran to the slide, yelling into his radio, confused, desperate. In the canyon, his signal wouldn't get through. He didn't look up. That was his last mistake. I found a lower perch, leveled my pistol, and took careful aim. 50 meters. A clean shot. One muted pop. A puff of crimson mist against snow. He dropped face first, still. 2 down, 3 left. The commander and whoever was left breathing near the wreck. They wouldn't risk the canyon now. They'd take higher ground or wait me out. I climbed through an old melt-run tunnel that curved toward the surface, bypassing their routes. An hour later, I was on the plateau again, a couple of miles west of the fight. Snow howled through the night, the wind building into a blinding white storm. Perfect hunting weather. Moving against the wind so they wouldn't smell or hear me, I finally spotted them. 3 dark silhouettes by a lone snowmobile. One was seated, injured. The other 2, one of them their leader, scanned the storm nervously. They believed I was still trapped below. Their vigilance waned. That was my cue. I crawled within shooting distance. The first shot dropped the standing guard. The second, his wounded companion. Quiet, efficient. The commander reacted instantly, diving behind the snowmobile. A pro, all right. He knew firing blind in a blizzard would light him up like a flare. "Come out, geologist," he shouted, his voice barely cutting through the storm. "Let's talk. I know who you are, Kane. Ramsey sends his regards. There's a deal on the table. Hand over the hammer, and you walk away." A lie. Ramsey never left witnesses. He wanted me to speak, to pinpoint my position. I stayed silent. I crept wide around the snowmobile, circling from his flank. "Think you're the only ghost?" he barked again. "The others, all dead. Your whole unit rotted away years ago. You're the last one, Kane. The last damn ghost. Surrender, and I'll make it quick." That stung. The mention of my old team twisted something deep inside. But emotion kills. I stayed cold. When I finally had the angle, I aimed low and fired. The bullet tore into his leg. He screamed, his weapon clattering onto the snow. I closed the distance, slammed the grip of my pistol into his temple. He went down. Searching him fast, I found a sat phone and a small case. Inside lay the reason for this assault, a handheld scanner, tuned to detect the crystalline resonance of my key. That's why they'd been so confident. They would have swept the base until it gave me away. I dragged him into a shallow ice cave I'd long ago prepared for emergencies. Using their own gear, I lit a fire and waited until he regained consciousness. He woke groggy, hatred and fear tangled in his eyes. "Who are you?" I asked. He said nothing. I didn't raise my voice. I simply pressed my gloved hand lightly against the bullet wound in his leg. The scream tore out of him, raw and instant. I asked again, slower this time, letting each word land like a weight. "Who are you? And who's running this operation?" He swallowed hard. "Call sign Granite," he rasped. "Team lead. The op is being run by Fox himself. He's at a forward base in Fairbanks, waiting on our check-in." Fox. Damon Fox. The same captain who'd led the cleanup 18 years ago. General Ramsey's favorite butcher. So he was here, close enough to smell the smoke. "What were you supposed to do after you got the hammer?" "Burn the station. Burn you. Make it look like a propane accident. No traces," he forced out through clenched teeth. That was it. Clean and simple. There was no point hiding anymore. Even if I ran, they'd track me down. Ramsey wouldn't rest until he had the key, and my corpse to prove it. I'd lived in the shadows for 18 years. Enough. Time to step into the light. Time to end this war. But one man couldn't stand against Ramsey's machine. Not alone. I needed help, and I knew exactly where to find it. In my cache inside the canyon, alongside ammo and emergency rations, I'd stashed an old military satellite unit, an ugly brick-heavy relic built back when hardware was made to survive the end of the world. Slow, bulky, reliable as stone, and it had one feature that mattered: a sealed, encrypted channel on a frequency known to only 12 people. 12 members of Contour 12. We'd sworn we'd use it only once, if the past ever came back to finish us. I left Granite in the ice cave, taking his sat phone and his weapon. I didn't kill him. If he lived and someone found him later, good. A living loose end made noise. Noise would pull Fox's attention the wrong way. I headed back toward the canyon, toward my last remaining card. The blizzard was dying down as I walked. But one thought hammered the inside of my skull. What if no one answers? What if Granite told the truth? And I really am the last one. I mounted the antenna with numb hands, clipped in the power pack, and felt for the transmitter keys like a blind man reading Braille. My heartbeat thudded so loud I swore the ice could hear it. I pressed the talk switch and spoke into the dark, using call signs I hadn't spoken in 18 years. Any station still on clean air? This is Geo. Repeat, this is Geo. Calling Contour 12. Do you copy? I released the switch. Only dead static answered. Thin, endless, like wind in space. Seconds stretched into something that felt eternal. I sat on the icy floor of my hideout, listening, feeling hope fracture like early river ice in November. 18 years. The world had reshaped itself in that time. Governments rising and collapsing, technology leaping forward, old wars replaced by new ones. 18 years of silence on that frequency. Maybe Granite was right. Maybe I really was the last shard of a unit that officially never existed. I was about to shut the device down to save what little battery remained when the static twitched. Just a faint click, warped by interference. And then a voice broke through, hoarse and exhausted, but so familiar it hit me like a fist. Geo, what the hell? We figured you were fertilizer by now. This is Owl. You there? Owl Ross Sloan, our analyst, the mind that worked like a supercomputer. I'd watched him go down in that coastal fort, cut apart by gunfire. But he was alive. Emotion surged up in me, too big for relief, too sharp for joy. It felt like coming home after a lifetime of exile. Good to hear you too, Owl, I said, and my voice betrayed me, rough around the edges. Reports of my death were exaggerated. I had reasons to stay dark. They came for me. Ramsey, Ross said, not as a question, just a verdict. We've been waiting since he started climbing again. It was always a matter of time. Where are you? Far north. I was running a private survey station. Was. It's gone. 7 operators, pros. I cleaned them up, but it's just the opening act. Fox is running point out here. Fox? Ross's voice turned to metal on stone. That animal's still breathing. I'll give you intel, Greg, Ross said, but I've got something better. You're not alone. Not alone. The channel clicked again, and another voice cut through. Sharp, energetic, alive. Geo, this is Tick. Still kicking. I told myself a dinosaur like you wouldn't go down easy. Tick, Arson Cole, our infiltration and close quarters specialist. The gymnast with a knife for a smile. He'd covered Lila's escape. Arson? How? My throat tightened. You saw what you were supposed to see, he cut in. Armor plate took it. 4 rounds to the chest, all into the ceramic. Then 6 months under a fake name in military hospitals. Thought I was done. And then a third voice slid in. Female, steady, calm, with the faint rasp I'd heard in nightmares for years. Greg, it's Spark. I'm alive. Lila Sparks, our electronics and demolitions specialist. The blast that threw me into the sea should have taken her with it. Lila? That was all I could manage. I got clipped, not wrecked, she said quietly. Arson bought me seconds. I got out through a service vent. I thought you were all dead. I looked, Greg. Every trail went cold. We all looked, Ross added. And we all learned the same thing. The only way to survive was to vanish, sink so deep even the devil couldn't fish you out. We stayed connected through dead drops and encrypted boards. We waited for your signal. We knew if Ramsey ever decided to burn the last traces, he'd come for you, for the key. Do you still have it? I have it, I said, closing my fist around the cold steel of the geological hammer in my pocket. Then everything changes. Ross's voice hardened with purpose. No more hiding. Time to collect. We're going hunting. What's your move? My world tilted on its axis. I wasn't a lone avenger anymore. I had my team back, my family. Fox is in Fairbanks, Ross said. Too close to your ground. We can't let him regroup and call in reinforcements. You need to get out, now. Head south. We'll meet. Where? Seattle, Arson answered immediately. City's a maze. Made for ghosts. Owl's already there. Has a hole. I'll be in 48 hours. Spark, 72. I'll send you the meet coordinates in an encrypted text through Granite's phone as soon as you hit cell coverage, Ross added. Right now, Greg, the only job is stay alive and make the distance. Fox will light up the whole region, his people, local cops, everybody. You'll be hunted as an armed fugitive who dropped 7 men. Understood, I said. I'll be there. End transmission. I powered the unit down. The silence that returned to the ice cave wasn't heavy anymore. It had meaning, pressure, direction. I wasn't alone. My brothers and my sister were alive. For 18 years, they lived under other names, like me, and they hadn't broken. They hadn't forgotten. And now we were together again. Getting out of that frozen hell wasn't a straight line. I trekked nearly 200 kilometers across tundra to the nearest half-alive mining town, 2 days without real sleep, pushing my body past reason. My shoulder burned, but I didn't let it slow me. Purpose carried me. When I reached the town, I looked like any backcountry hunter. Torn clothes, wind-scoured skin, stubble. I found a bush pilot who, for a few small gold bars I'd panned over the years, agreed to fly me. No questions asked, in his battered little single-engine plane to Anchorage. He probably figured I was hiding from debts or a messy divorce. Let him think that. From Anchorage, it got easier. A freight run south, then a cargo ship ride down the coast. I stayed where nobody looked, below deck, among containers and machinery, in diesel thrum and cold half-light. A perfect place to think. We'd been scattered across the country like shards of broken glass. Now we were coming back together. Ramsey thought he was hunting the last survivor. He didn't know he'd awakened all of Contour 12. He thought he'd sent 7 dogs after me. He had no idea 4 ghosts were moving toward him, and they'd been saving their debt for 18 years. When I finally stepped off the ship in Washington, I wasn't the isolated geologist from the Arctic anymore. That man stayed behind in the ice. The one who walked into the city was an operative back from the dead, on his way to finish the mission that never ended. I bought a train ticket to Seattle and sat among ordinary people headed to ordinary lives. Out the window, the landscape shifted. Snow-lined to forest, forest to wet fields and gray towns. This country had trained me, used me, betrayed me, and somehow I still carried a twisted kind of loyalty to the idea of it. The train horn sounded like a war call. Seattle waited ahead, and so did the fight. The city met me with low clouds and cold rain that seemed to fall sideways. After the sterile quiet of the far north, it hit like a wave. Traffic, voices, the layered stench of exhaust, wet asphalt, cologne and fast food. I felt like a foreign body in a bloodstream moving too fast. For 18 years, my world had been wind and ice and the slow creak of metal under cold. Here, every sound, every glance felt like a possible threat. I stepped off at King Street Station, blended into the crowd, and slipped straight into the light rail. I powered on Granite's phone. An encrypted message arrived instantly from Owl. Coordinates and time. An abandoned ship repair yard on the waterfront. Tonight, 11 p.m. I had hours to burn, so I spent them becoming invisible again. In a thrift shop near an old neighborhood strip, I bought plain, forgettable clothes. Dark jeans, a gray sweater, a black rain jacket with a hood. I checked my only bag, a backpack holding the hammer and my pistol, into a locker. Now I looked like every other tired man in a rain city, head down, moving with the crowd. The shipyard was the perfect meeting place. A rusting skeleton of steel and concrete on the edge of dark water, wind moaning through empty bays like something not quite human. I reached the meeting point, a decaying boathouse, an hour early. Old habits die hard. I moved slow, cautious, checking every angle and shadow. I trusted Ross, but 18 years of living as prey had taught me to trust no one fully, not even ghosts from my own past. Inside, the air was heavy with machine oil, rust, and sea salt. The vast space echoed like a tomb. A single weary bulb dangled from the ceiling, painting the gloom in dull amber. Beneath it stood a man with his back to me, studying a rusted piece of machinery. "Early for a geologist," he said, without turning. "I thought Northerners liked to take their time." Ross Sloan. He hadn't changed much. Taller than I remembered. Lean, wire-drawn, a little silver threading through his hair. Lines gathered at the corners of his eyes. Still unmistakably him. He turned, and for a heartbeat, time folded. 18 years vanished between us like a breath on cold glass. "You've aged, Owl," I said. "And you've turned into a damn mountain hermit," he smirked. We didn't hug. We simply shook hands, firm, grounded. The handshake of men who had already survived hell together once and didn't need words to prove they still could. We sat on an old crate. He poured tea from a thermos. Plain, steaming, familiar. "I set up here," Ross said after a pause. "Built a small cybersecurity company. Clean work. Pays the bills. But off the record, I've spent these years shadow tracing Ramsey, cataloging Fox, tracking anyone tied to what happened back then. I've been preparing, Greg. I knew the day would come." Half an hour later, the others arrived. Arson Tick Cole entered first, quiet as smoke, his movements still cat-like but heavier now, stronger. A scar slashed through his left eyebrow, giving his face a sharper, more dangerous edge. Lila Sparks followed. She'd changed most of all. The restless sharpness of youth had settled into a focused composure. There was a calculation in her gaze, that same half-curious, half-amused glint that saw the world as one vast circuit, each connection as something she could cut or complete at will. 4 ghosts reunited in a cathedral of rust and salt air. No sentimentality, no tears, just curt nods, quiet words, the faintest smiles. Tick was running a front as an industrial climbing instructor, a brilliant cover that kept him fit, anonymous, and able to scale anything from towers to rooftops. Spark owned a private boutique tech lab, repairing high-end electronics and occasionally adjusting security firmware for the right clients. Everyone had a new name. Everyone was ready. "All right," Ross said finally. "Let's talk business." He flipped open his laptop on the crate. A map of Seattle glowed to life across the screen. Rings, markers, and notes plotted across the docks and industrial sectors. "Ramsey's in D.C. right now, lining up for a promotion. He thinks the mess is buried. Fox, after losing contact with the Arctic team, realized the operation tanked. He's here, right in this city." "Why here?" I asked. "Because one of Ramsey's critical assets is here," Ross replied. "A covert data vault, his black ledger. It holds his offshore accounts, his entire secret network. Fox came to secure it or relocate it. He's holed up in a safe house near Harbor Island. 6 guards minimum, all ex-spec ops, all loyal. Taking him there is suicide," said Tick. "Too much heat. Cameras, patrols, secure perimeter." "Exactly," nodded Ross. "We won't go to him. We'll make him come to us." He brought up a photo, a man in his 40s with thin lips and restless, calculating eyes. "Meet Nathan Bell. Call sign, bookie, Fox's financial man. Greedy, cowardly, useful. He hand-delivers reports and cash once every 3 days. He's scheduled to visit tomorrow evening." The outline formed instantly in my head. Risky, reckless, perfect. "We grabbed the bookie," I said. "Quietly," Tick added. "My department." "Then," Spark chimed in, "we create a scenario where Fox has no choice but to show up himself. Make him believe bookie's in trouble and the package needs urgent pickup. And we set the meeting," Ross concluded. "Our ground, our rules." The old forts in Commencement Bay, I said. You are abandoned, isolated, surrounded by water, labyrinthine, perfect for ghosts. Ross's thin smile said everything. Good. Step 1, grab bookie. Tick, you lead. Spark, you jam comms and monitor every frequency. Greg, your backup muscle. If anything goes sideways, you cut in. I'll coordinate from the van. Our mobile command was a beat-up delivery truck wired with Spark's equipment, part war room, part hacking den. We dispersed soon after. The barrel fire we'd set to fight the cold threw huge, writhing shadows across the steel walls. 4 silhouettes against the dark. The living dead ready to settle unfinished business. We weren't chasing justice. This system didn't deserve that word. What we wanted was payback, cold and inevitable, like the tide. Tomorrow night promised to be very interesting for Damon Fox. He just didn't know that his past was already closing in. The next 24 hours passed in perfect synchronicity. We worked like the unit we once were. Efficient, silent, seamless. Ross and Spark turned the van into a surveillance hub, looping into city traffic cameras, tapping cell towers, hijacking police frequencies. Tick shadowed Nathan Bell for half a day, studying his routes and routines. Bell was a classic white-collar criminal, neurotic, fussy, hopelessly unaware of real danger. His arrogance was armor, and we were about to crack it. I spent that time preparing the trap, drove across the bay to Fort Anderson, a stone and steel husk sitting on an artificial island, half submerged in the gray cold water. Perfect stage for the performance ahead. I charted exits, marked sight lines for sniper cover, and mapped out choke points. It was like my Arctic canyon, only man-made, quieter, deadlier. My kind of battlefield. Evening rush hour, city gridlocked. As predicted, Bell emerged from a downtown office tower, carrying a padded briefcase, and headed to the basement garage. Tick, dressed as an electrician, slipped in behind him. In the surveillance van parked a block away, Spark killed the lights and cameras for 20 seconds. Total blackout. Bell froze. "Mr. Bell," Tick's voice came calm and even from the dark. "Don't make a sound. The thing in my hand? 3 seconds to your heart if I press it. Now you're going to walk calmly to that gray Ford in the corner. Take your briefcase with you. You cooperate, you live, and maybe keep some of that unregistered cash you've been grooming. Don't, and we take it all, including you." It worked exactly as expected. Greed and fear drowned loyalty. Bell obeyed without a word. 30 seconds later, when the lights blinked back on, the gray Ford, me behind the wheel, was already blending with the evening traffic. In the van, miles away, Ross smiled faintly as he watched our trembling prisoner on the feed. "Clean work. Our turn." Spark pulled out Bell's phone and set up a voice modulator. She dialed Fox's private number. Tick, standing nearby, spoke through the device. His voice transformed into Bell's panicked quaver. "Mr. Fox, sir. Sorry, I've got a situation." "What kind of situation?" Fox's voice came through clipped, cold, methodical. "I'm being tailed. Think it's one of Ramsey's rivals. I shook them, but they know my place. The office, everything. I can't go to the safe house. It's a setup." "Where are you now? Do you have the package?" "Yes, sir, I've got it. But there's more. I overheard something. I think they know about the Amber Room." The Amber Room, the code name for Ramsey's Black Archive, his off-the-books vault. We'd found the term buried in one of Ross's recovered files. A perfect lure. No way Fox could resist. "Don't move," Fox snapped. "Give me your location. I'm coming myself." "No, sir, don't," Tick's imitation voice quavered. "They might be tracking you. You need somewhere isolated. Meet me at Fort Anderson across the bay. At the Central Pier. 2 hours. Alone." Dead air for a moment. Fox wasn't stupid. He smelled danger. But the mention of the archive left him no out. 2 hours, he said finally. "And if this is a trap, Bell, I'll find you in whatever hole you crawl into." Then silence. "He took the bait," Ross said. "But he'll bring company. Probably approach from the water in multiple angles." "Let him try," Tick grinned. "We'll be waiting." 2 hours later, the night swallowed the fort in darkness. The wind off the bay cut like a blade. and the air carried a storm's promise. I lay prone on top of the central tower, the long barrel of an old sniper rifle resting steady on a sandbag. We'd pulled it from one of our buried caches, a ghost weapon for a ghost unit. From up here, I could see the entire fortress, the crumbling seawalls, the piers, the crooked pathways leading toward the abandoned bunkers. Tick was already gone, a shadow in the web of courtyards below. Spark remained across the bay with her rig, ready to jam the airwaves once the first move began. Ross sat in a hillside observation post, eyes on screens, calm as ever, coordinating every breath we took. Right on time, the deep growl of engines rolled in from the water. But it wasn't one boat, as Fox had promised. It was three, fast, light Zodiacs, running dark, engines hushed. They split formation, surrounding the fort like sharks. "At range," I whispered into comms. "Phase 1. "Light it up, Spark," Ross ordered. A second later, all of Fox's frequencies erupted into chaos, white noise like a sandstorm over the radio waves. He and his men were deaf, blind, isolated. At the same moment, the spotlights I'd planted around the island blazed to life. A wash of brutal light ripped across the water, stripping away their cover. I could see them all, faces half hidden under helmets, rifles snapping up too late. I fired 3 times. I wasn't aiming at people. I was aiming at mobility. 3 clean hits, 3 engines destroyed. The boats lurched, spun, lost their power, targets adrift. Gunfire erupted back, wild and panicked. Bullets snapped through beams of light, chewing the old concrete. It didn't matter. Their surprise was already burned away. Then Tick emerged from the fortress shadows astride a black jet ski, cutting across the waves like a phantom. He swung by one of the dead boats, dropped a small pouch onto its deck, then veered away. A dull bang followed. Not an explosion, but a pulse. Spark's EMP charge. Every circuit within 10 meters went dead. Comms, GPS, guidance systems fried to ash. Through the scope, I found Fox. I could see his face, rage twisting it into something inhuman. He screamed orders, waving his men toward the pier. They lowered their heads and rowed, desperate to reach land, still believing their enemy was waiting inside the fort. But their real enemy was waiting on the water. Tick banked hard, angling toward the next boat. That's when I saw one of Fox's men rise from the stern of the third boat, shouldering an RPG. The tube flashed upward, aiming straight for Tick. "Down, RPG!" I barked into the mic. Too late. The rocket streaked toward him. Time froze. Then, nothing but a flare of light and a shower of harmless sparks. Spark. She deployed her active defense grid, an electromagnetic bubble-bending flight paths just enough to ground the rocket harmlessly into the sea. Their last ace, gone. Fox's men faltered, their comms dead, their weapons useless, their strategy in ruins. "Drop it, Fox!" Ross's voice boomed over the loudspeaker, amplified to roll across the waves. "You're surrounded. Surrender now." Fox answered with a burst of rifle fire. "So be it," Ross murmured. "Greg, you're up." I shifted the scope, switching from engines to arms and legs. Precision shots only. One by one, the rifles dropped from hands no longer capable of holding them. Tick closed in, leaping onto Fox's boat. The two collided, steel, fists, fury. In the end, there was only one man left standing. 5 minutes later, it was done. Fox's men were disarmed or bleeding, their leader slumped against the deck, gasping, one shoulder out of joint. Tick held a knife poised just above his throat. I clambered down from the tower as the wind carried the stench of burnt salt and diesel. We transferred the prisoner onto our own small craft. "Who the hell are you people?" Fox rasped, glaring at us with bloodshot defiance. I stepped in close enough for him to taste my breath. "Greetings from the Baltic, Damon," I said quietly. "Contour 12 sends its regards." What flickered in his eyes wasn't fear. It was recognition. The cold horror of a man meeting the ghosts he created. The bait had worked. The wolf was in our trap. All that was left was to make him talk, make him lead us straight to Ramsey. Our new base operated out of the cellar of an old brick tenement Ross had been using as a safe house. Damp air, dripping pipes, mold on the walls, a fitting place to unearth buried sins. Fox sat bound to a metal chair that Tick had bolted to the concrete floor. Spark set up a camera, its single floodlight stabbing him in the face. blinding him. The four of us stood just beyond it, silhouettes in shadow, silent as judgment. When Tick's stimulant woke him, the first thing Fox saw was that light. The first thing he heard was Ross's voice, soft, clinical, utterly emotionless. "Welcome back, Damon. 18 years, wasn't it? Where am I? What do you want?" His voice was cracked but steady. Not fear, anger, calculation, the caged predator still looking for a door. "You don't need to know where," Tick said, stepping forward into the light. "You just need to know who. You remember me, Fox. That fort on the Baltic coast. You emptied half a clip into me yourself. Missed the heart." Fox peered at him, studying the scar, and a sneer twitched at the corner of his mouth. "Cole, so the dead do walk. Too bad for you. Ramsey's going to bury you all over again." I moved beside Tick, my voice calm and low. "He'll bury you first, Damon. The moment he learns you failed. You know how he deals with loose ends." The truth jolted him. His eyes darted to me and widened in disbelief. "The geologist. That was you." "We're all ghosts," Spark said from the dark, stepping closer until her reflection glinted in the lens. "Ghosts you made, and we're here for your soul." The interrogation wasn't about screaming or violence. It was strategy. Ross dissecting him with precision, peeling back his defenses layer by layer. He laid out facts only insiders could know. Dates, code names, covert details from missions Fox thought buried forever. Proof that we knew everything. 2010, Ross said evenly. Northern provinces, execution of warlord Aslamov, officially done by federal forces. In reality, it was you, 3 men, Ramsey's direct order. Aslamov wasn't a terrorist. He was Ramsey's partner who asked for too much. Fox's jaw flexed. 2014, the Desert Front, officially an advisor. In truth, you brokered arms trades through Ramsey's shell companies, outfitting rebels to destabilize regimes. Same rebel firepower that later killed American soldiers. Ring a bell? More silence. His shoulders stiffened, eyes fixed on the floor. Every word cracked the armor a little more. "All of this," Ross continued, "was Ramsey rebuilding his empire one corpse at a time. You were his right hand, his hammer, and when he was done with you, he planned to discard you like the others." "You're bluffing," Fox snapped at last. "No one outside our circle could know this." Spark moved closer, holding out a tablet. On its screen, live footage from a nursery camera. A woman tucking a little girl into bed. Fox's wife, his daughter. "Sweet kid," Spark said softly. 7, right? Loves her daddy. It would be tragic if something ordinary happened, like a faulty heater. Gas leaks happen all the time. Ramsey's favorite cleanup method, isn't it? He jerked against the restraints, choking out a snarl that shook into something close to panic. It wasn't fear for himself. It was fear for them. "Don't touch them," he growled. "That's up to you," Ross said coolly. "Tell us everything about the Amber Room, where the archive is, how it's protected, the access protocols, every operation Ramsey's buried, every name, every account. Give us the map." "In return," I said quietly, "your family gets out. New lives far away from Ramsey. You get a trial, a clean one. Better than what's waiting for you if he catches wind of this." Fox stared at the floor, the war inside him visible in every twitch of muscle. The loyal soldier versus the father. Even monsters keep a small piece of something human. "You're lying," he whispered. "You'll kill them too." "We're not Ramsey," I told him. "We don't slaughter families. We keep our word. Word of Contour 12. That phrase hit deeper than anything else. He knew what our code meant. He'd seen men die by it. His breath came slower, steadier. The fight in him faltered. Finally, he lifted his head. "I'll talk," he said. And he did. For hours. Spark recorded every word. The confession of a monster unraveling himself, cell by cell. He told how Ramsey, back when he was still just a colonel, had built him an army of ghosts, killers disguised as patriots, cleaning up political rivals and inconvenient truths. He listed the names, the politicians, the businessmen, the journalists, the officers, all vanished by Fox's hand. Each one branded an accident, a crisis, a suicide. And the deeper he talked, the darker it became. And then he told us about the Amber Room. The server wasn't in the underground data vault we'd expected. That was deliberate disinformation. It was buried deep beneath Seattle, inside a highly classified government bunker, officially a strategic communications reserve node. Ramsey had abused his clearance to lease several secured server racks for his personal empire. Breaking in was close to impossible. 5 security tiers, biometric gates, armed rapid response units stationed on every level. But there's one weakness, Fox said, his voice thin from exhaustion. Once a month, during scheduled maintenance, from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m., some of the outer loop defenses are powered down for testing. That's your only window. You could get in through a decommissioned ventilation shaft that still connects to the sublevels. Ross leaned forward. And to actually reach the core? You'll need 3 things, Fox croaked. A full layout, live access codes, they cycle every 12 hours, and the key. What kind of key? Ross asked, though I already felt my chest tighten. It's not digital, Fox murmured with a humorless smile. Ramsey doesn't trust the virtual layer. He keeps a physical one, a dielectric crystal, unique structure. Only it can unlock the deepest sector. He carries it with him everywhere. I cut him off, the realization slamming home. It's built into a geological hammer. He stared at me. How could you possibly? He stole it from my mentor, I said quietly. The man who designed the system for him, and who Ramsey later killed. That hammer was meant for me. He just couldn't resist turning it into his personal secret. Everything fell into place. 2 keys, 2 crystals, my hammer, his hammer, brothers forged for a single lock, and one of them was in our hands. The next maintenance window's in 48 hours, Fox finished. 48 hours to plan and pull off the most insane heist of our lives, the infiltration of the most guarded facility in the country. Odds of survival, minimal. Odds of turning back, 0. This is suicidal, Sparks said later that night, studying the crude floor plan Fox had sketched from memory. This isn't just high security, it's a damn Fort Knox remake. High voltage perimeter, pressure-sensitive floors, seismic detectors, an argon purge system that floods the chamber if alarms trigger. The guards aren't rent-a-cops. They're special response teams. Even if we got through the shaft, we'd have minutes before we're tagged. Then we do it in 4 minutes and 59 seconds, Tick said evenly, tracing a road along the vents like a climber mapping a new ascent. It's not just physical security, Ross added, typing furiously. Lines of code flickered across his screen. The entire defense system is run by an AI core, self-learning, adaptive. It cross-checks environmental data, reaction times, movement patterns. You can't fake it or brute force it. Any system can be fooled, Spark muttered, her eyes flashing with the thrill of the challenge. Fox gave us the architecture. Adaptive means changing, but every adaptive net has a base protocol, a root kernel that can't rewrite itself. If I can touch that layer, even for a moment. How? I asked. She looked up, calm and sure. Physical access. From the inside. I need a direct line into one of their secured terminals, even for 30 seconds. The plan began to take shape, a razor-thin outline balanced on the edge of madness. We split into 3 teams. Alpha team, Tick and me. Physical entry. During the maintenance window, we descend a 300-meter ventilation shaft, navigate the maintenance corridors, and reach the server hall. Beta team, Spark, electronic warfare. She'd enter the above-ground administration wing disguised as a maintenance engineer. Full credentials, forged work order, microcomputer embedded inside her toolkit. Her job was to deploy her virus, creating a blind zone, a 2 to 3 minute blackout across surveillance sectors before the AI rebuilt itself. Gamma team. Ross, command and coordination. He'd stay mobile, weaving chaos into the system. False alerts, spoofed pings, sabotage reports to divert security. He'd track all of us and open our exits. The next 48 hours dissolved into pure focus. No sleep, no slack, no margin for error. Spark used the data from Fox to build her alias, a tech contractor specializing in climate control units. Perfect paperwork. A corporation name bought off the dark web, a uniform, badges, and tools, all authentic down to barcode signatures. Tick and I memorized every inch of the schematics, every ladder, valve, hatch, every route to escape or die on. We prepped gear, harnesses, thermal cutters, suppressed sidearms, climbing spikes, and microcams wired to Ross's tablet. Midnight, the 16th. The world lay buried in fog. The forest around the compound looked like the mouth of a frozen beast. We were in position. "Spark's moving," Ross confirmed through our encrypted channel. Through the live feed, I saw her approach the outer gate. Calm, professional, clipboard in gloved hands. A brief conversation, a scan of credentials, and she was in. Phase 1, clear. Our turn. Tick and I reached the ventilation shaft. A concrete cylinder wide enough for a truck, capped by a steel grate that weighed half a ton. 15 minutes till window, Ross said. We slid hydraulic jacks beneath the grate. When the system cycled into diagnostic mode at 2 a.m., the alarms linked to the grid went offline. The jacks whined, lifting the cover just enough for us to squeeze through. Below us yawned a black, endless drop, a vertical tunnel descending nearly 1,000 feet. We clipped harnesses and began the descent. The ice-coated walls glistened in our headlamps. Far below, a massive ventilation fan thrummed like a sleeping monster. "Spark's in position," her voice buzzed in our ears. "I'm linking into the internal network now. You've got 30 seconds before the airflow restarts. I'll trigger an emergency stop." 10 meters above the spinning blades, we waited in weightless silence. "Do it," Ross ordered. The fan slowed, then halted completely. We slipped between the enormous blades and dropped into the maintenance deck below. Breath steaming, hearts hammering. "You've got 4 minutes and 30 seconds until the AI reboots," Spark said. "Disabling sensors in Sector G7. Go." We sprinted down a narrow corridor, pipes humming, floor vibrating beneath our boots. Tick bypassed electronic locks with Spark's signal tool, while I watched the clock on my wrist tick down. 3 minutes. 2, 1. The final door loomed ahead. Steel, biometric seal. "Can't crack it remotely," Spark warned. "It's isolated." Fox had told us about this. An emergency override panel was built beside the lock, a manual failsafe requiring a 12-digit code, changed twice daily. We had the current sequence. Tick keyed it in. The lock disengaged with a heavy clunk. We burst inside. Row after row of servers surrounded us, humming with low electric power. The heartbeat of an empire. 15 seconds, Spark's voice rose. "System reboot incoming." "Which rack?" I asked Ross. "Sector B, Rack 7, marked with a red seal," he replied instantly. We found it. I pulled out my geological hammer, the one Ramsey once tried to erase from existence. The head clicked perfectly into the port. The crystal hummed. Across the screen flashed, "Access granted. Data transfer initialized." "Yes," I breathed. And then, sirens. Lights flaring red. The AI was awake. It knew. The door behind us slammed shut, bolts locking in sequence. "Alert!" Ross shouted in our ears. "Security team en route. Less than a minute." The data bar crawled upward. 10%, 20%, painfully slow. Outside, boots thundered down the hall, voices barking orders. "Spark, Tick, go," I said. "Back route, now." "Not without you," Tick snapped. "Move," I roared. "That's an order." On Ross's monitor feed, I saw Spark ripping out her connectors and vanishing into the hall. Tick gave one last look back, then disappeared into the shaft. I stood alone in the glow of the servers, the pistol warm in my grip, the world clawing at the door. 30 seconds, 50%. They hit the door with rams, metal screeching. 70. A hiss filled the room. Gas? No, coolant. The system purging the breach. 90. The door folded inward, and the first helmet breached the threshold. I fired once, dropping the lead man. Another stepped up, his shout drowned in chaos. And then, transfer complete, 100%. I was alone now, just me, the humming of the servers behind, and an armed strike team pounding at the door. The download hit 50%. A steel ram smashed against the door, again and again. Each blow sent shuddering ripples through the metal, bending it inward, one dent at a time. I crouched behind a server rack, pistol in hand, eyes fixed on the entrance. 2 extra magazines in my pocket. Not nearly enough, but this wasn't about winning. It was about seconds. Buying everyone I could. 65%. 70. Greg, status? Ross's voice crackled in my earpiece, tight with strain. Still breathing. Are Spark and Tick clear? They're topside, moving to evac now. Good, that's what matters. The door groaned. One of the locks gave way with a snap. A small inspection probe slid through the gap. I fired once, the camera shattered. Now they knew I was armed and waiting. The pounding stopped. Silence. They were forming up for the assault, 75%. This is security, a voice boomed through a loudhailer. You're surrounded. Drop your weapons and raise your hands. I said nothing. Couldn't let them guess I was alone. We know there are others inside, the voice persisted. Surrender and you'll live. Lies. Ramsey's orders were always the same. No witnesses. 82%. Smoke began to snake under the door. Not tear gas. Too sharp. Too heavy. Neurotoxin. I had a minute, maybe less, before the world went dark. Ross, they're venting something. How much longer? I shouted between shallow breaths. 90. Almost there. Hold on, Greg. I stumbled to the back corner, where the air was thinner. My lungs burned. Vision tunneled. 95%. The door blasted open with a shriek. Shields, muzzle flashes, armored men flowing in like black water. I fired to cover, hitting legs, feet, anywhere to slow them down. Sparks exploded across the walls as their return fire shredded the racks. One of the servers caught fire, filling the room with ozone. 99. My pistol clicked empty. I dropped it, body heavy, breath ragged. Knees hit the floor. A soldier rushed me, twisted my arms back, zip-tied my wrists. The room tilted and blurred. The last thing I saw before everything went black was the monitor screen. The words glowing in green. Transfer complete, 100%. Target secured, someone barked behind me. Subject unconscious. What about the server? Destroy it, came another voice, flat, in command. I woke to concrete, gray, bare, windowless. A single fluorescent light buzzed overhead. My skull felt like it had been split open. I was strapped to a chair. Across from me stood a tall man with a government badge clipped to his vest. Head of security. Who are you? He demanded. Who sent you? Silence. Every second I held out was a second my team gained. Meanwhile, miles away, in a van speeding down a highway into the dark countryside, Ross, Spark, and Tick huddled around a laptop as the downloaded archive decrypted line by line. Spark's hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God! It was worse than any of us had imagined. Not just corruption, not just trafficking. Ramsey's archive was the anatomy of treason, a record of crimes spanning decades, sales of weapons tech, engineered coups in small nations to seize resources, contract hits on politicians and generals, private armies built from laundered blood money, names, dates, bank accounts, video files of executions. Ramsey wasn't a corrupt officer. He was a disease, a metastasized cancer inside the heart of the state. That's enough to light a damn war, Tick muttered. Or purge a nation, Ross said quietly. We're holding a weapon more powerful than anything we've ever carried. The question is how to use it. They all knew the same truth. Hand it to the agencies and they'd vanish. The files would sink into vaults, buried forever. Ramsey's reach extended everywhere. We can't go through the system, Ross concluded. We go above it. Controlled detonation. The plan he proposed was ruthless in its precision. No grand expose, no chaos. A surgical strike of truth. Spark split the archive into dozens of encrypted packets. The first, financial records, cartel ties, offshore accounts, was sent anonymously to the U.S. Financial Crimes Bureau and Interpol. That guaranteed the story would reach international light. The second contained documents proving the sale of military technology to Beijing. That packet went, indirectly, to a rival faction inside the military command, ensuring an internal war Ramsey couldn't control. The third packet, holding footage of murders and torture sessions, Spark encrypted and delivered through one trusted journalist, a man too respected and too watched to be silenced quietly. And then came the final blow. They hacked into private encrypted messengers of dozens of the nation's most powerful figures, politicians, oligarchs, generals. Each received one carefully selected fragment, proof tying them personally to Ramsey's crimes. Every message carried a single line, "Full archive scheduled for public release in 24 hours. You have 1 day to save yourselves. Contour 12. It was an information bomb with a timer ticking above the Capitol's skyline. It didn't just expose alliances, it turned them on each other. By dawn, Ramsey's men would be fighting his own allies for survival. At 8 that morning, Spark pressed send. "It's done," she said softly. The digital storm erupted. Western media broke first, headlines screaming high-ranking general linked to global cartels. Then the home networks caught fire. Within hours, independent journalists started publishing the leaked documents. Panic tore through the government and intelligence circles. Ramsey's phone burned with calls, not from subordinates, but from former partners desperate to dissociate before the explosion reached them. His empire began to collapse like a building stripped of its foundation. While that storm raged, I was being moved, handcuffed in the back of an armored transport, destination unknown. I was the last piece, proof, a liability, maybe both. Then the brakes slammed, shouts outside, gunfire. The rear door flew open, smoke poured in, and then, Tick's face, half grin under the helmet. "Time to stretch those legs, Geo." They tracked my convoy through intercepted dispatch chatter, set an ambush, cut me loose. Half an hour later, we were holed up in a moldy cabin northeast of the city, watching the news on a cracked old TV. That was the night Ramsey's empire fell. They led General Ramsey out of his mansion in handcuffs, a man once untouchable, now pale and hollow-eyed. He looked older, beaten in a way power could never repair. "Checkmate," Tick murmured. Our war was over. We had won. Not just vengeance, but something larger. We had started a chain reaction that would force a reckoning. But for ghosts like us, victory meant only one thing: disappearing again. Forever. The trial of Lieutenant General Andrew Ramsey and his network became the loudest scandal and the most guarded secret in modern history. The public saw only the surface: corruption, black market finance, treason light. The rest, the assassinations, the foreign manipulations, the blackmail operations, was buried behind classified seals. Ramsey got life without parole. His empire burned down, but the traces he'd left inside the system would take years to scrub clean. Officially, Contour 12 was never found. In confidential reports, we were listed only as an unidentified group of individuals with advanced tactical capabilities. Maybe someone high enough up, someone who benefited from Ramsey's fall, decided it was better to leave the ghosts at peace. They let us vanish, gave us the anonymity we had earned through blood and ruin. We met one last time in a small cafe on the city's edge, a quiet place where no one recognized faces or history. We sat by the window, watching the pulse of the city we might have just saved from something far worse. No longer soldiers, no longer operatives. Just 4 tired human beings, finally free of the war that defined them. "So what now?" Tick asked at last. He turned a spoon in his hand, watching his reflection tremble in its curve. "Now we live," Ross said. His voice carried the calm of a man who had finally laid his ghost to rest. "I've got a company, a son I've only known through video calls. Time to be a father instead of a strategist in the shadows." "I'm leaving," Spark said, eyes lost somewhere past the window in its rain-rinsed rooftops. "I've had enough of this country, its endless wars, its ghosts. I want a place with sun and salt in the air. Maybe Portugal, a small workshop by the ocean where tourists bring me broken laptops and I fix them. Simple." She smiled, soft and distant. I caught the sadness behind it. We'd all lost too much to ever be whole again. "What about you, Greg?" Ross asked. "Heading back north?" I nodded. "Yeah, but not to hide. To live. That's where I belong." We said goodbye the way operatives do, without big words, without promises. We already knew this was the last time. The bond between us ran deeper than language, and it would stay that way. like an amber scar sealed into the heart. We were brothers and a sister, born of secret wars and forged in betrayal. And now each of us would walk a different road. I went back north, not to the wreck of my old base, but farther, into a valley ringed by mountains, beside a lake so clear it mirrored the sky. Even in winter, its surface never froze, fed by warm springs beneath the ice. There I built a house, not a prefab shelter, not a concrete bunker. Real walls, real wood. I cut every log myself, carved the beams by hand. It wasn't about safety anymore. It was about belonging to something real. 3 years passed. The cabin blended into the land, as natural as any stone or tree. I renewed my geology license, filed small reports, sent samples to private companies once a year. It was enough to stay legitimate. But mostly I just lived. I hiked the ridges, tracked caribou migrations, watched snowy owls carve white lines across the horizon. The wilderness didn't own me anymore. I was its keeper. One morning near midsummer, when the tundra rolled into color and the air turned almost gentle, a woman appeared at my door. She was a biologist from a distant reserve. Anna. Studying lichens, she'd lost her trail in the hills. She had warm gray eyes, a tired smile, the kind that could melt permafrost. I helped her contact her team, gave her tea, shared food. We talked through the night. I told her about rocks and winds. She told me about mosses and birds. I never spoke about who I'd been, and she never asked. She saw me for what mattered now, not what I'd left behind. She flew out the next day. A month later, she returned, this time just for me. She brought a handmade sweater and a husky pup to keep me company in the long winters. In time, she came more often, until one day she simply stayed. The house that had been a fortress turned into a home, filled with warmth, laughter, and the happy noise of a dog racing through the snow. For the first time in decades, my nights were silent. No flashbacks, no gunfire in my dreams. The ghosts of the fort faded, drowned beneath the rhythm of wind through the pines and the steady heartbeat of love. Sometimes by the fire, I still pick up that geological hammer, the old one, the key that once held a nation's fate. Now it sits on the mantle, harmless. The crystal inside isn't power or vengeance anymore. It's memory, a reminder of a war fought, debts paid, names avenged, a story of betrayal, justice, and the dawn that finally followed a night too long. When Anna leans her head on my shoulder and our dog curls by the hearth, I look into the flames and know, my war is over. Here in this endless wilderness, in the peace of a house built by my own hands, in the warmth of a woman's love, I finally found what I'd been searching for all my life. Not oblivion, peace.